Hey, are you down for war with Iran? No, of course you're not. It isn't in America's interest, and it would be really bad for the global economy and millions of innocent civilians. Guess what? Israel doesn't really give a f***. When Netanyahu arrived to visit Trump, he presented plans for a joint attack on Iran and was expecting Trump to greenlight them. Trump discussed the plans with his administration and determined it wasn't a good idea. So he rejected the war plan and said he wanted to give negotiations with Iran a chance instead. This enraged Netanyahu and the Israelis. And just a few days later, Trump appointees started dropping like flies. And now there are reports that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who was against Netanyahu's Iran war plan, is being axed. So what the f is going on? Are the Zionists behind these firings? And if so, do they really have the balls to drag the US to war with Iran?
Could this prick have the balls to try something like this?
Now here's the crux of the issue. The US and Israel are not and have never been on the same page about what to do with Iran. Obama determined that a nuclear deal was more than enough to solve the Irani nuclear problem. But Israel didn't like this, so they got Trump to blow up the deal. This mistake brought Iran even closer to developing a bomb, which Israel was supposedly afraid of. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right? You would think Israel would want to keep the deal in place that limited the uranium enrichment. But here's the thing. Israel's issue isn't really with a nuclear weapon. It's with the government of Iran itself. They want war so they can flip the government and replace it with the son of the ousted Shah as a puppet that they can control. So they need negotiations with Iran to fall apart so they can drag the US into a war that would destroy Iran and flip its government. But the US, despite Trump's aggressive posturing towards Iran, is actually interested in negotiations, and they've made a lot of progress. Iran and the US met in Oman for the first time on April 12th. The talks went so well that the US and Iran agreed to meet again for a second time in Rome on Saturday, April 19th. And those talks went even better. Iran basically told the US that they were willing to reduce uranium enrichment and allow for close monitoring of their nuclear program, and the US told Iran that they were willing to accept that. So they scheduled a third round of talks in Oman. And tomorrow, on Wednesday, April 23rd, the science geeks are going to meet to hash out the technical details of how to achieve their political goals. Basically, reduce uranium, unplug a centrifuge, allow for inspectors to monitor, blah, blah, blah. After those details are hashed out, on Saturday, April 26th, Trump's Middle East envoy, Stephen Witkoff, and Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, are supposed to meet and approve these technical plans and then decide on how to proceed. All of this is very promising. The talks have been going so well that Oman, the country helping to mediate these discussions, said Iran and the US have agreed to enter into the next phase of their discussions that aim to seal a fair, enduring, and binding deal which will ensure Iran is completely free of nuclear weapons and sanctions and maintain its ability to develop peaceful nuclear energy. It is only dialogue and clear communication that will be able to achieve a mutually credible agreement and understanding for the benefit of all concerned regionally and internationally. So basically, in a short amount of time, Iran and the US have been able to solve their problems through dialogue, communication, talking, you know, like normal human beings do when they are more interested in peaceful resolution than war and conflict. But this is pissing Israel off because they want war. They were convinced that Trump was their guy, that he would go to war with Iran just to make Israel stronger, even though it isn't an America first position. So the neocon warhawks and Zionist fanatic goyim have been criticizing Trump to try and pressure him to break negotiations. Just take a look at this tweet by Nikki Haley, Obama 2.0. Here's what she means. You see, the current deal Witkoff and Iran are negotiating is very similar to the deal Obama originally negotiated back in 2015, the one that Trump ripped up on behalf of the Zionists. Why is it so similar? Because it wasn't actually a bad deal. If the entire point is to stop Iran from having a nuclear bomb, then the deal did exactly that. But Nikki Haley, who creams for Israel and Zionist money, mocked Trump, calling it Obama 2.0 to try and dissuade him from accepting the deal. And it doesn't end there. Zionists are all over the media and complaining that the negotiations are going well, which is crazy because A, it isn't any of your business, you don't get to force the US to go to war. And B, the negotiations going well means Iran doesn't build a nuclear weapon, so they should be celebrating. But as I said earlier, they aren't really interested in preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. They are interested in destroying Iran completely. Take a look at these tweets from Zionist warhawk Mark Dubowitz. Maximum pressure is getting less and less maximum and less pressure. Yeah, that's because things are going well. And then in a separate tweet, he basically communicates what he really wants, which is war, and why he thinks that's the right decision to make. The Islamic Republic is weaker than ever, hated by most Iranis, hammered by the IDF and Mossad. Its terror armies, air defenses, and missile production capability are in ruins. Never a better time to dismantle its nuclear program and finish off the regime. Will another POTUS blink? First of all, Dubowitz is exaggerating Iran's vulnerabilities, which by the way is a deliberate part of the propaganda that I'll get into later. Secondly, and more importantly, it's not in America's interest to destroy Iran. They did this to Iraq, and it blew up in their face, got millions of civilians and thousands of American soldiers killed, destabilized the Middle East, produced extremism and sectarianism, deepened the debt, and weakened the dollar. It's one of the biggest mistakes in history. So destroying Iran is really only in Israel's interests. But Dubowitz and the Zionists don't give a fuck about that, because they are more loyal to Israel's interests than America's. They are desperate to make America see Israel's interests as their own interests. And they aren't just talking shit in the media. They are doing everything they can to convince Trump to push the big red button. As we discussed earlier, Trump discussed Israel's war plan on Iran with his administration. One half approved of the idea, while the other half had their reservation. The administration members and their staff that convinced Trump to reject the war plan are now getting fired one by one. It started last week when 3 of Pete Hegseth's staffers were suddenly fired from the Pentagon. Senior advisor Dan Caldwell, Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick, and Colin Carroll were fired over unauthorized leaks. These 3 men were so shocked and confused that they put out a statement on X. Unnamed Pentagon officials have slandered our character with baseless attacks on our way out the door, the aides wrote. All 3 of us served our country honorably in uniform. For 2 of us, this included deployments to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And based on our collective service, we understand the importance of information security and worked every day to protect it. Basically, he's saying the allegations against them are complete bullshit. He continues, Caldwell, Selnick, and Carroll expressed in the statement that they still had not been told what they were being investigated for. If there was still an active investigation, or if there was even a real investigation of leaks to begin with. And take a look at this interview between Caldwell and Tucker Carlson.
That's why people want war with Iran. I think when it comes down to it, is a lot of people still think you can do regime change wars successfully in the Middle East.
Regime change wars? I thought this was all about getting rid of the whatever half dozen Iranian nuclear sites because we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
Well, I think Donald Trump has exposed them. I mean, some of the biggest advocates of war with Iran, groups like Foundation for Defense of Democracy, writers at certain publications, essentially they are saying the problem with diplomacy is it doesn't lead to regime change, is that the policy should be regime change. It's almost like the nuclear issue is really about creating a pathway to regime change.
So what did these 3 men have in common? Well, they're veterans. So as veterans, they likely understand how futile wars in the Middle East have affected Americans, particularly the soldiers who risked their lives for the interests of billionaires and Zionists. But they weren't the only ones to be removed. As the media has been reporting, the DoD is now in disarray. The Chief of Staff for Pete Hegseth, Joe Casper, was reassigned, and the entire digital team at the Pentagon was let go. Little by little, the DoD is being hollowed out, which gives the Zionists an opportunity to appoint the advisors and staffers that they know will support the war with Iran. So the next time Trump gets advice, he gets it from them. The Zionists have been using their leverage with Trump to get other Zionists appointed. Trump doesn't realize it, but he's surrounding himself with enemies of his America First movement. And some of these people being appointed are literally Israeli agents.
Speaking of who's going to fill this vacuum, Trump's NSC director for Israel and Iran previously worked for Israeli Ministry of Defense. You can do that. You can work for the Israeli Ministry of Defense, and then you can work for the United States. Well, of course you can. Why did you think that you couldn't?
Well, this is very important. So as I explained previously about the NSC, we just talked about power vacuum. So not only do we have Mike Waltz, who we know advocated for a war with Iran when the Israelis were here, we now know that he put in charge of the Israel and the Iran portfolio, combined that portfolio under this woman, Merav Sarin. Now, Merav Sarin is the director for Israel and Iran at the NSC. Now, what we know from her own background, publicly reported, let's put that up there on the screen, please, shall we, is that she admits, quote, worked at Israel's Ministry of Defense.
He recently appointed Mark Levin, an unqualified TV talk show host and diehard Zionist, to Homeland Security. Levin recently attacked the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, for doing her job. She told Congress that Iran didn't have a nuclear weapon or the intention to develop a nuclear weapon, according to the information that she had.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Levin shared an article written by another deranged Zionist warhawk, Fred Fleets. Gabbard must reverse stupid U.S. intelligence on Iran's nuclear weapons program. U.S. intelligence still claims Iran has no active nuclear weapons program despite stockpiles of near weapons-grade uranium and evidence of covert weaponization efforts. Tulsi Gabbard should do away with this stupid intelligence immediately because the evidence for an active Irani nuclear weapons program is overwhelming and undeniable. As Sagar Enjeri said from Breaking Points, this is Dick Cheney visiting the CIA to manipulate Iraq intel level stuff. This is in reference to the Bush administration in 2003, when then Vice President Dick Cheney made multiple trips to the CIA in the year leading up to the Iraq War to pressure analysts to make their assessment fit with the Bush plan to go to war with Iraq. Basically, they lied. The problem they have with Tulsi Gabbard is that she didn't. She did her job. She told the truth based on facts collected by US intelligence. But these facts could prevent a war with Iran. So Zionists, like Levin, are pressuring her to change her assessment. So don't be surprised if she changes her tune or if she gets fired from her position. And as we discussed earlier, it looks like Pete Hegseth is about to get the boot as well because he supposedly leaked information via a Signal chat. Now keep in mind that just about everyone in the Trump administration was in a Signal chat a month ago discussing sensitive information because National Security Advisor Mike Waltz added Jeffrey Goldberg, a journalist, to the group.
Everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone?
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz appeared on Fox News in an attempt to explain how he inadvertently included the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg to a Signal group chat discussing U.S. war plans.
But Mike Waltz didn't get fired. There is no scandal with him. So why is Hegseth on the hot seat while Waltz gets to keep his job? Well, Hegseth expressed reservations to Trump about Israel's Iran war plan and advised against it. Mike Waltz did not. You can put two and two together. It's clear that the use of a Signal chat isn't really the issue. It's a manufactured scandal to get Hegseth sidelined and replaced by a Zionist who will approve of Israel's war plan. So don't be surprised if Hegseth is replaced with Ben Shapiro, Douglas Murray, or maybe even Ben Gvir in the coming weeks. Now let's talk about exactly what happened internally in regards to Israel's war plan. As you know, Netanyahu called Trump to discuss war with Iran in the lead up to the renewed negotiations. Trump told Netanyahu that he didn't want to discuss it over the phone and would rather meet in person. So Netanyahu flew to Washington expecting to hear good news about a potential war with Iran, but he was severely disappointed. According to the New York Times, Israel had planned to strike Irani nuclear sites as soon as next month, but was waved off by President Trump in recent weeks in favor of negotiating a deal with Tehran to limit its nuclear program. Trump made his decision after months of internal debate over whether to pursue diplomacy or support Israel in seeking to set back Iran's ability to build a bomb, at a time when Iran has been weakened militarily and economically. The debate highlighted fault lines between historically hawkish American cabinet officials and other aides more skeptical that a military assault on Iran could destroy the country's nuclear ambitions and avoid avoid a larger war. It resulted in a rough consensus for now against military action, with Iran signaling a willingness to negotiate. Israeli officials had recently developed plans to attack Iranian nuclear sites in May. They were prepared to carry them out, and at times were optimistic that the United States would sign off. Almost all of the plans would have required US help, not just to defend Israel from Iranian retaliation, but also to ensure that an Israeli attack was successful, making the United States a central part of the attack itself. For now, Mr. Trump has chosen diplomacy over military action. Good job. Earlier this month, Mr. Trump informed Israel of his decision that the United States would not support their attack. He discussed it with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when Netanyahu visited Washington last week, using an Oval Office meeting to announce that the United States was beginning talks with Iran.
We're having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen.
In a statement delivered in Hebrew after the meeting, Mr. Netanyahu said that an agreement with Iran would only work if it allowed the signers to go in, blow up the facilities, dismantle all the equipment under American supervision with American execution. Of course, that's never gonna happen. Okay, now remember earlier when I told you that exaggerating Iran's weakness was part of the propaganda to push the US to war with Iran? Well, pay attention to how the New York Times contextualizes the war with Iran. Quote, "There were many reasons that Israeli officials expected Mr. Trump to take an aggressive line on Iran. In attacks on Israel in April, most of Iran's ballistic missiles were unable to penetrate American and Israeli defenses. Air defense systems in Iran and Syria were also destroyed, along with the facilities that Iran uses to make missile fuel, crippling the country's ability to produce new missiles for some time." These are talking points that you hear the Zionists make quite often when trying to sell the idea of why it's a great time to go to war with Iran. The problem is that it's mostly bullshit. First of all, Iran did penetrate American and Israeli air defenses. This was captured on camera by American media reporting live from Tel Aviv during the attack.
What you're describing.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Okay, guys, we got to get off the roof. These are coming down right next to us here.
And the crazy part is that Iran gave both America and Israel a 3-day heads up before this attack, and they still penetrated. And just look at this footage.
المطار دخل مطار المطار دخل يا ولاد لا مطار المطار دخل لا طلع المطار ده ينعم تحرك 200 المطار يا واو 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 واو
Does this look like Iran penetrated American and Israeli air defenses? Or am I just imagining this shit? And when it comes to Israel allegedly destroying Iran's air defenses and missile facilities, there's an important question to ask. Firstly, I will say, honestly, I don't know if that's true. Maybe that did happen, but we don't have any videos of it. I can tell you with confidence that Iran penetrated Israel's air defenses because I just watched it on video, but I can't do that with Iran. Secondly, if Iran is truly so weak, if their air defenses and their factories were destroyed, what is Israel waiting for? Why don't they just attack Iran right now the way that they attack Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza? This tells you that Iran isn't weak and defenseless. Their capabilities are intact, which is why Israel's trying to drag the US to war on their behalf. It's as simple as that. This is why the Trump administration is split on the issue of war with Iran. They understand that Iran has the ability to produce blowback. Inside the Trump administration, some officials were becoming skeptical of the Israeli plan. In a meeting this month, one of several discussions about the Israeli plan, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, presented a new intelligence assessment that said the buildup of American weaponry could potentially spark a wider conflict with Iran that the United States did not want. A range of officials echoed Ms. Gabbard's concerns in the various meetings. Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Vice President J.D. Vance all voiced doubts about the attack. Okay, the implications implications of all of this is mind-boggling because it's incredibly dangerous. There are traitors in the White House right now surrounding Trump, constantly manipulating information, lying to him about what's happening, exaggerating Iran's threat, and simultaneously their weakness, trying to disrupt negotiations and using every contact they have in the Trump administration to sell Trump on war with Iran. Trump is probably being pitched on war with Iran every day, multiple times a day by multiple people. The White House is essentially occupied by pro-Israel Zionists. At this point, only you can stop this war. So speak out and support Trump when he rejects the idea of fighting a war with Iran on behalf of Israel.
Trust nothing.